Well, I think that the ecological crisis is rooted in social relations of domination, as Murray Bookchin often says. And, I would point to two sort of examples of this. Capitalist firms, they're driven to, reduce their expenses to the minimum. That's how they make a profit. And this, drives them to employ as few people as they can, creating unemployment and driving wages down. But also, if there are, for example, things that are damaging to the health of the workforce, they can avoid having to pay the consequences of that. So let's suppose that they're using various kinds of chemicals that are very toxic in the workplace that end up being spewed out into the surrounding community in forms of toxic pollution. Consider, for example, oil refineries that pollute the air and cause, cancer patterns in the surrounding region and so forth, in the air pollution. So that's going to pollute the workers first. The workers are actually on the front line of that. And we can think of another example in oil refineries would be, look at industrial agriculture, the way capitalism runs agriculture. So we have massive uses of pesticides, which are sold to growers by chemical companies like, say, Monsanto and others, that on the basis that it will improve productivity by, killing all the pests that eat some of their product. The workers, the farm workers, who work in the fields and apply them, are going to be the first victims of that. They're going to be, they and their families and their communities, rural communities, are going to be poisoned by that. And then it gets into the water systems and pollutes the water, the groundwater, and so forth. Well, the capitalists don't have to pay for that. This is an example of cost shifting. They shift costs onto other. Cost is anything which is harmful, damaging, painful, undesirable to other people, to human beings, right? So, poisoning the water supply, poisoning farm workers, these are all just, things that are damaging, but the capitalists can avoid paying for it. So they're shifting the costs onto others. By not paying those expenses, that's how they make a profit. And so therefore it's a motivation to them to do that, because they can make a profit by shifting costs into others. That is itself one of the sources of the ecological crisis, because capitalist firms are cost-shifting machines. That's what they do constantly. So they're dumping, they're using the earth, the environmental commons as a sewer to dump their waste into, because they don't have to pay for it, because in essence the problem here is that we should regard the air and the water and the land as a genuine commons. To be a genuine commons would mean that there's the community of residents, of people who are affected, would have some way to control use of the commons. But that's not what we have. They have the people who in a rural community are polluted by the pesticide. Like, for example, in various parts of the Central Valley, you have problems of pesticide clouds will move into a town right off of the fields, and people will breathe the pesticides. So the community does not have direct control over the use of the air and the water and the land. So they can't protect themselves. They have no institutional mechanism within capitalism to protect themselves. And so that's part of it. Also, capitalism is an extractive system in the sense that it's always been built on the plunder of the resources of nature. So the capitalist firms go out searching for forests to cut down and mineral resources to mine. And in the course of this, because of course usually there are indigenous or various populations that live in these various places, they will have to find some way to push those people aside. And So you have all these struggles going on in various parts of the world between capitalist lumber and mineral companies, oil companies, wanting to move in and push the local population off the land or out of the forest so they can extract the resources to convert them into commodities. So it comes down to a question of disempowerment of the people who reside in the various places where these capitalist activities are taking place. Both the communities that like live in areas where oil fields are set up or created, and also the disempowerment of the workers in workplaces where toxic pollution is generated, like in oil refineries or other workplaces. So I think that's the source of the problem, and the solution to the problem, I would say, then comes from two things. The workers have to gain management power within the industries, so they can then change the technical methods and organization of that industry to protect their own health as well as that of the communities around them. But also communities, the entire societies have to be able to gain control over the environmental commons, control over it in the sense of controlling access to it by people, so that they can control whether pollutants are to be permitted, or if they want to allow it because there's certain techniques of production that they haven't yet figured out a way to do it without any pollution, then at least be compensated for it in some way. So, and that's important because you have to provide the production organizations with an incentive to innovate, to reduce environmental damage, because that ultimately will be damage to the people, in that environment. So it comes back to in a way you could say this comes back to the dual governance structure that's proposed by libertarian socialism as the replacement for capitalism, where you have both residence-based organization, community assemblies and so forth, and you have workplace-based organization, because those are the two sites of the source of environmental pollution and destructive actions by capitalist firms.